Second theme speaker is Professor N.K. Samadia. Professor N.K. Samadia is the president-elect of the Indian Geotechnical Society, and I know him personally over 2 decades. And many of the conferences we met and we served each other as the executive committee member of Indian Geotechnical Society. In my personal observation, he is very cool-headed, hardworking, committed, and dedicated about the IGS works. And Professor Samadia is at present is a professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Roorkee. Previously, it was University of Roorkee, and he is the recipient of IGS Professor Leonard Biennial Prize 1999-2000 for the best PhD thesis in the geotechnical engineering. He has published several IGS. He got several IGS Best Paper Awards and ISR MTT Best Research Award. The research papers, numbering over 200, have been published in national and international journals and conferences. And he has organized many conferences and workshops under the aegis of Indian Geotechnical Society. To name a few, on Indian Geotechnical Conferences IGC 2003 and IGC 2013, he was organized. He is the chairman of BIS CED 48 Rock Mechanics Committee and an active member of TC 207 Task Force of ISSM NGE on preparation of the guidelines on soil structure interaction and retaining walls. And now, next 2 years from January 1st to 2021 to December 31st, 2022, he'll be heading IGS, and under his guidance and leadership, number of conferences will be held, and at least two IGCs will be held, and he is going to handle all those things. Already he is having as he himself has organized two IGCs. He is the most experienced person in IGS and also the senior professor of IT Roorkee. Sir, I invite you to deliver the lecture on the development in geotechnical engineering for sustainable tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh, for the nice words. And at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Uh, uh, Dr. Tyagraj and Dr. Ramarao. Uh, so I will be presenting my lecture. So I will just share. Now, can you see full screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you very much. The today's lecture is analysis of shotcrete lining and the estimation of support pressure of Sardar Sarovar underground power cavern. Actually, what I have tried to find out the support pressure based on the analysis of the shotcrete. So it is actually the shotcrete has been analyzed, and I have used one layer of joint element on the top of the shotcrete, which is in contact with the rock mass. So initially, I have analyzed the Sardar Sarovar Pahos cavity, and finally, whatever displacements were obtained, those displacements I have considered as the boundary condition for the joint element, and whatever normal stresses I have got on the shotcrete lining, those I have termed as the support pressure. So for any underground excavation, the design and performance evaluation, it warrants the knowledge of displacements and the stresses in the surrounding rock due to excavation. Now, as you know, that in situ rock will always have discontinuities in the form of various geological structures. So these play a dominant role, and they influence the displacements and the stresses in the surrounding rock after the excavation. So the analysis of underground openings should be systematic and scientific, If it is not, then you will get this type of situation, it may collapse also. So this is the heading collapse, 27th of October 2004 in Teesta Powerhouse project. Now, as I said, that the rock mass essentially consists of two constituents. One is the intact rock, and another is the discontinuities. So the presence of these natural discontinuities, which may be part of a fault or a fold or a shear zone or joint or bedding plane, these can exert a significant influence on the response of rock masses in both surface as well as the underground excavations. So all these joints always occur in sets. These create anisotropy in the response to the applied stress field. So in order to analyze this Sardar Sarovar powerhouse cavern, I have used the shear zone as well as the rock mass, all the joints, their orientation, their actual attitude, means dip and dip direction, their spacing, and the number of joints, etc. So for that, I had to develop a 3D joint interface element, and this is the 3D joint interface curve element, in which, since I have done the three-dimensional analysis, so I have gone for the 16-noded joint interface element. So the top surface will be in contact with the different material, and the bottom surface will be in contact with the different material. So as far as the derivation is concerned, so this is the middle surface of the joint element interface. I will not be going in the details of this because all these details are available in my ASC paper, International Journal of Geomechanics. So what I have done, I have determined the relative displacement between the top surface and the bottom surface, and from that I have tried to find out the D matrix for this particular joint element. So all these details are available in this paper 2008, 3D joint interface element for rough undulating major discontinuities and rock masses, International Journal of Geomechanics, ASCE. So this is how I have got the element stiffness matrix for the joint element. And similarly, since I have got the regular jointing in the rock mass, so I had to derive the constitutive relations for the rock mass. So what I have done, I have taken the overall response of the rock mass and tried to replace it by another anisotropic continuum, so that I can get the response of the entire rock mass. So here, this epsilon z double dash, these are the strains in a direction perpendicular to the joint, and there are number of joints. So I have summed up. I have also tried to take into account the dilatancy which is occurring, the change in volume or the overriding of the joints during sliding. So I have tried to find out the strain displacement matrix, that is the also known as the compliance matrix. And since there are joints oriented in different directions, so there will be different directions involved. So I had to go for the transformation matrix from one axis system to another axis system, and another axis system to the axis system perpendicular to the joint. So here, this is the compliance matrix for the rock material, and this is the compliance matrix for the joint. So again, this particular part is also published in International Journal of Geomechanics, ASCE. So I will not be going in the details. Now, including all those features, I have developed a program. Actually, I wanted to name it as ASRAM, but I could not do it. So this is ASARM, that is the analysis of stresses in anisotropic rock masses. And there are capabilities of this particular program. So here, this is our program at IIT Roorkee, and we have analyzed several cavities using this particular program also. So this program is a general purpose finite element program, and program structure is modular, application in rock and soil mechanics. This is displacement formulation, and three-dimensional solid element and 3D joint element can be included. It can take into account the dilatant behavior. We have done low tension analysis. It can be used for isotropic and isotropic, and the explicit representation of major discontinuities and implicit incorporation of the regular jointing. Pressure dependent modulus has been used. Now I have extended it for the water charge rock mass also. And we can go for multiple loading condition. So again, the entire description is given in one of my paper of Journal of Rock Mechanics and Tunneling Technology. Then using this program, I have analyzed the Sardar Sarovar powerhouse cavern and tried to find out the stress distribution and also the displacement. And those displacement I have used as the boundary condition for the analysis of the shotcrete lining. All the details are again given in International Journal of Rock Mechanics and Mining Sciences. So coming to the, with this background, coming to the Sardar Sarovar Powerhouse project, it is a World Bank aided multi-purpose river valley project, which all of you know that it is constructed on river Narmada and is situated at Kevadia village in Gujarat state. Now this project includes 138.68 meter high and 1210 meter long concrete gravity dam, the underground powerhouse cavern, which is aligned north 10 degree east parallel to the main dam, is a large cavern of 23 meter width and 210 meter length and 58 meter height. And this cavern, the overburden is of the order of 30 to 65 meter, and there are various types of rock, like we actually have the agglomerate, the dolerite dikes. Those are ranging in thickness from 40 to 55 meter. And one such dike, which cuts the alignment from Chinese 1448 to 1492.5 meter at the cavern X, is aligned in north 70 degree east, south 70 degree west direction, and dips at 60 to 65 degree towards the river side. So both contacts of this dike with the adjoining basalt flows are shear. The first shear contact is thin and does not intersect the cavern, whereas the second shear contact, that is shear zone B, I have designated it as shear zone B, is 1 to 2 meter wide and intersect the cavern at Chinese 1492. So this is the geological longitudinal section. Now you can see here, these are different type of rocks which are there. You have agglomerate, you have the basalt, you have the dolerite dike, and you have the dolerite sill. Now this dolerite intrusion is something like this, and there is another dike, vertical dike on this side, but it doesn't intersect. So this is the boundary of the cavern. Okay, so this is the boundary of the cavern. Now here you can see there are two shear zones. One is shear zone A, another is shear zone B. So this shear zone A, it doesn't intersect the cavern, whereas this shear zone B, which is about 1 to 2 meter in thickness, it intersects the this cavern, and it is also aligned in obliquely inclined to the horizontal plane. So these are the materials which are there. Now I have tried to simulate the actual geometry. So this is my longitudinal section of the finite element mass, in which you can see that this is the cavern, and this is representing the shear zone, and this is representing the dolerite dike on this side. Now this is the cross-sectional elevation of that. So you can see, although the elements which I have used, these are not the finer element, but since I had to consider the entire mass, so I have used these elements. Now this is the three-dimensional view of the entire underground cavern. You can see that this particular shear zone is going like this and intersecting, and it's intersecting with the intersections with the cavern is this. Now, normally we say that what is the use of engineering graphics? Why do we teach engineering graphics? And why do we teach this stereographic projection? So I can say here that without the knowledge of engineering graphics and the stereographic projection, I would not have been able to create this particular three-dimensional geometry. Now, after the analysis, I have taken into account the anisotropic rock mass with shear zone. Although I have analyzed for the isotropic without shear zone, with shear zone, anisotropic with shear zone, but since finally the anisotropic rock mass with shear zone is the actual condition. So these are the displacements which are determined, and displacements are exaggerate on the exaggerated scale. So this is the shape of the cavern after the. So please note that this is on the exaggerated scale. These are not the actual. And this shear zone is, again, it is not to the scale, but it is intersecting the crown axis. So what I have done, I have determined the displacement all along the boundary of this particular cavern using this particular procedure, and those boundary displacements I have considered as the boundary condition for the shotcrete lining. So these are the stresses. This is the stress pattern. So I have tried to represent the sigma y and sigma z in the vertical direction and sigma y in the horizontal direction. So this is the variation. You can see that there is lot of concentration of stresses in a direction tangential to the excavated boundary. Now, if I plot it along the longitudinal axis of the cavern at the top of the cavern at the crown, then you can see that if I consider only the isotropic case or isotropic case with shear zone and anisotropic case with the shear zone. So from this slide, we can see that the anisotropic rock mass with shear zone is representing the actual stresses. Now you can see that the stress concentration factor has increased from, if I consider only isotropic case, from 2 plus to anisotropic case in which isotropic case only when shear zone is considered, so around 4, and then it has gone up to around 9.5. So there, the fact is that there will be lot of stress concentration near the shear zone boundary. Then I have analyzed the shotcrete and tried to find out the support pressure. Now the shotcrete lining has been modeled by method of substructuring. The shotcrete has been modeled using a single layer of 20-noded isoparametric brick element. The portion of shotcrete modeled includes that in the side wall, the crown, and on the southern face. The southern face has been included due to the presence of the shear zone B because it is intersecting. A layer of joint element has been added above the layer of the brick element to simulate the influence of the surrounding rock mass. Now the displacement derived from the analysis of cavern have been applied to the outer surface of the joint element other than in contact with the shotcrete to obtain the displacement, support pressure, and the stress in the shotcrete. The internal surface of the powerhouse has been developed. So this is the developed portion of this. So here you have got the this complete development of, so this is on the southern side. So this is the shear zone here. And this is the shotcrete lining. Again, it is not to the scale. So the boundary conditions have been imposed by assigning the displacements at the corresponding nodes lying on the outer surface of the joint element. The elements in shotcrete layer lying at sidewall floor junction have also been subjected to the prescribed displacements equal to the displacements obtained from the analysis of the cavern at the same point. And these are the material properties for the shotcrete. So these material properties, I have taken the material properties for the concrete. Now, each joint element has a spring in the direction normal to the surface of the shotcrete. So the stiffness matrix has been determined. That is the pressure divided by the displacement. So that pressure is due to the normal in situ stress divided by the displacement due to the release of the in situ stress. So Since the institute, the top surface means the overburden is varying all along the boundary of all along the cavern. So I have tried to find out the normal in situ stresses, varying normal in situ stresses at different locations. So I had to divide this into 13 regions. So here the different values of the normal stiffnesses and shear stiffnesses are given. Now with that, I have then analyzed it. Now then I have tried to find out the displacement of the cavern. Now you can see here that these are the displacement without the cavern, and these are the displacement with shotcrete, and just near the shear zone there is a kink, so there will be relative displacement more. And but if we apply the shotcrete lining, then with shotcrete you don't see this particular kink. Now these are the displacements of the downstream wall. This is near the shear zone or just at the shear zone contact. Now these are the displacements of the upstream wall, and again these are the displacements. So near the shear zone you can see, and you can see the effect of the shotcrete. Now the effect of shotcrete is not predominant. It means this shotcrete is simply acting as a layer. The application of shotcrete layer has reduced the displacement only marginally. So the effect is more pronounced at the crown, whereas in the side wall the reduction is small. It can be seen that the kink observed in the displacement at the shear zone has disappeared due to the shotcrete lining. However, very high shear stresses are likely to develop in the shotcrete lining under such conditions, and this has also been confirmed by the appearance of the cracks in the shotcrete lining in the vicinity of the shear zone, a study done by Devatia and Trivedi. On comparing the permissible stresses with the induced stresses in the shotcrete, it has been inferred that the induced hoop stress and shear stresses are much higher in the vicinity of the shear zone than the permissible stress in the shotcrete lining, which can cause cracking of the shotcrete in the shear zone. The lining therefore requires additional measures from the safety considerations. Then the normal stresses on the joint element will directly provide the support pressure exerted by the rock mass on the shotcrete lining. So the variation of the normal contact stress, that the support pressure at the crown along the cavern axis, has been presented in this particular figure. You can see these are the support pressures which are required. Naturally, the support pressure in the area very near to the shear zone will be high, and then away from the shear zone. So the support pressures are high in the vicinity of shear zone of the order of 75 to 115 kilopascal. You can see here 75 to 115 kilopascal and 50 to 65 kilopascal away from the shear zone. The higher support pressure in the vicinity of shear zone may be due to the presence of weak rock mass and are corroborated by the corresponding high displacements. The roof support pressures thus obtained have been compared with Barton et al. 1974, Barton 1989 approaches, and Bhasin et al. In 1995 and Grimstead and Barton have advocated the use of mean value of Q around the weak shear zone. On the similar lines, I have suggested that the mean value of the joint roughness coefficient JRM should also be used in estimating the support pressure. So what I have tried to do, I have tried to find out, this is the data based on the study given by Ramaswamy et al. They have determined this Q parameter, RQD, JN, JR, JA, JW. So near the shear zone, I have said that we should go for determining this the effect of the shear zone, etc. So here this is jointed basalt, this is jointed dolerite, then in shear zone, then mean value of the shear zone. So the roof support pressure and the wall support pressure as per the Barton criteria is determined from these two equations. So in this, they have the Grimstad has suggested that we should go for this Q mean. So they have given this relationship. So I have also suggested that we should go for the effect of the shear zone material on the value of JR. So and then I have determined the roof support pressure from my this study, present study FEM, then NGI Barton's 1974 system, and then the typical range which are suggested by Barton in 1989 paper. So you can see that the support pressures are in agreement what have been suggested by the Barton. So I can say that this is an alternate approach by which we can also determine the support pressure. So finally, the conclusions are that the shotcrete behaves essentially like a membrane. The stresses in the shotcrete are higher than the permissible stresses, especially near the shear zone. The influence of shotcrete is negligible as far as the displacement behavior of the cavern is concerned because of its low stiffness. The influence of shotcrete is negligible as far as the displacement behavior of the cavern is concerned because of its very low stiffness. The long-term support pressure computed in the present study are in good agreement with those obtained using NGI criterion of Barton et al., even near the shear zone. However, wall support pressures away from the shear zone are negligible due to the lower stiffness of the shotcrete in the horizontal direction. Failure of support system in and around shear zone is indicated both in the present study and the recommendations of Jetwa et al. Of CSIR's Simford Dhanwad based on the empirical classifications. So this was my lecture. Thank you so much for patiently